Well, hello everybody. Welcome to another episode of Audio Signals podcast. I've been catching up after a little bit of hiatus from this show, but I love talking about storytelling so much that now I'm really cranking on a lot of episodes, although I do need to, the real job, I need to keep talking about society and technology. And it's not that I don't enjoy that, but share stories. It's something that I love, listen to stories, and most of all, as I like to say, and I like to start the podcast with, we are all made of stories. I don't care if you're a painter, a writer, a musician, or even if you just tell your story to a friend, you're still telling story. That's how we that's how we are in a society. I don't think we could be in a society without stories. So today, I'm actually really excited. Is a story that I don't know. I haven't read the book. I will listen to the Audible because that's how I listen. I consume my book lately. And Mark, my guest today, he actually did what I love people that write books to do, which is read their own book. I just love when the author reads the book. So I'm looking forward to that. But before I keep rambling, here's Mark. If you're watching the video on YouTube, you already see him. And if you're not, and you're listening to the audio, here he is. Welcome to the show.
Hi, it's great to be here.
All right. You're like, all right, you spoke too much already. So
No, yeah.
No, really, I'm excited. So I know you have a really great story. I want to hear about it, but I want to start obviously with your story, personal story, kind of like your short bio and how you ended up writing the book that we're talking about today.
Okay, so I grew up in a little village in northern New Jersey, about 20 minutes outside of New York City, or 20 hours depending on traffic. I've got four older siblings, two sisters, two brothers, and a younger sister. And both of my parents worked. We had a great, I guess, Italian upbringing in New Jersey. And mom was a proofreader for the largest newspaper in New Jersey. And my dad was a chemist. And so they worked full time. My mother actually worked a night shift. So we, all of us are very independent people who at one point in our lives owned our own businesses. And I wasn't sure if that's because of our independence or that people were afraid to hire us. So it might have been a mix of both. But then I went to school at the Ohio State University. So I slowly moved out west. And I kind of tell a funny story. I visited two colleges, Harvard and the Ohio State University. I ended up going to the Ohio State University. Apparently, the other one's a little pickier about SAT scores and things like that. So, but I was happy to go to Ohio State. And then I got a degree in industrial design, which married a lot of my love. So I was very creative. We grew up in a very creative household. And so math and science were really important to me, but also art. So industrial design at Ohio State especially was a very European Bauhaus version of it, and it was married all those three interests, which was great. But I think because of the creative household I grew up in, the acting bug got to me in 1984, and I moved out to Los Angeles and did that Hollywood thing for 28 years. And that, what I loved about that, I mean, I had a pretty good thing going, and I've got a nice pension coming up in a few years, which was a nice surprise, but it got me into writing. And writing is what brings us together today. So I'm very thankful for, I guess, all my years, even the tough ones in LA.
Yeah, so you do the LA thing, the Hollywood thing. What is the Hollywood thing for people that are not
most people
me in the industry?
Well, most people go out there to act, but there are a lot of people who go out there, they want to be an agent. They want to be a lawyer, entertainment lawyer. They want to be a producer and a writer and things like that. So I initially went out there to act. Then I started doing some stand-up, and one of the classes I took, so I wanted to be a good actor. So I studied from day one, and I had an agent connection actually from Ohio, because I did some modeling and commercials in Ohio, and I had a connection. So I had an agent right away. Not a great agent, but God bless her soul. She was my first agent. And then I started acting lessons right away and got into class. And I pretty much did that the whole time I was there, because acting is like a muscle. You've got to keep it tuned up, and it's like exercise. So, but one class said it was an audition class, and it was a big time casting director who cast everything from the ABC soap operas to Happy Days and Laverne and Shirley and all those things. So he was a good guy to know. And he really liked my work. And he said that we're going to all be writing a scene at the end of this class, and you're going to cast it and have them perform it. And it freaked me out at first because this was the big time. And I always kind of created fun stuff growing up. But now you're in Hollywood, where you have the top of the, I guess, the best guys. So I did it, and I cast it well. These guys did a great job, and I got hooked. I said, boy, this is fun. So I started writing, I guess, scenes, and then characters, and then screenplays and short films and things like that. None of the screenplays were produced. The short film was produced and actually won a comedy award, which was nice. But out of that, I started writing and recording family history, which was good, because I was very curious about the family. We had some interesting stories from way back when, and they always fascinated me. So I always recorded those. And when we had family reunions, I would write a poem that summarized the highlights of the week. And then I actually started a greeting card company. So I did a lot of writing for greeting cards, and then made those very personal. So whoever got those got a really nice personal note with something special in there about the family. And then if we want to get to the subject of the book, in 2011, I got a call from my brother. At this point, I was in LA for many years. My mother was living in the house we all grew up in New Jersey. And she had some people overseeing some of the household duties, because at that point she just turned 89. But she was not happy, and she just kind of checked out. So she was non-responsive. My brother called and said she's in bed in almost like a semi-comatose state. He called the doctor. The doctor said, cut off all meds and food. She's going. And then hospice was called. And I kind of freaked out, because 14 years earlier, hospice was called for my dad. And 2 days later, he died. And so all the kids flew in, and she didn't open her eyes, or very rarely opened her eyes, didn't talk, didn't say a word. She did respond a little bit to touch, but I think she was really depressed and saying that this is going to be my final years. I'm done. I don't want this. And I have a chapter in the book called A Silent Scream. And I think it was a cry for help, because once all her kids were there, she slowly but surely, after a few weeks, snapped out of it. And then I kind of realized that, yeah, the environment that we grew up in was a beautiful, welcoming, fun home. Both of my parents were very funny people, and it was no longer that. And so I didn't make the decision then, but I stayed probably a couple of months, and went back to LA, and then came back in September and took care of her again. We learned, my younger sister and I hung out with hospice, because we didn't know how long mom was going to be with us, but we wanted to take care of her as much as we could. So we learned how to do all the tips and tricks that they do, changing the bed with a helpless patient in bed, changing the diapers, taking care of any kind of medical needs and things like that. So I think mom sensed that we were doing this, and she slowly and surely snapped out of it. And I realized that she deserved better. And by the end of the year, I moved back into my childhood home. And took over the 24/7 caregiving. And so my first kid was a 89-year-old lady.
Well, it's like when I was reading the synopsis of the book and the comment that you're getting from people that read it, it seems to me that all that you have done, and obviously, I mean, we are who we are in a certain point. And we probably, when you get to a certain age, you've lived at least a couple of different lives, if not more, meaning different business.
Right.
You've done this, you have done that. You had like your moment. And that's great, because this is what make us become who we are. And And I feel like, again, by just reading what the book is about, is that your entire personality is in that book. I mean, I'm reading that there is the comedy, like you present a delicate, intimate situation that changed your life from being in LA, doing your things, doing the Hollywood things, to say, you know what, mom is mom. I'm Italian, so I think that way, and you did that. So, after all these experience, what prompted you to say, "Hey, this is a story that is worth to share"?
Well, while I was doing it, again, with my habit of recording family history, I took lots of notes. I didn't know what I was going to do with them yet. Right. With my dad 14 years earlier, I took lots of notes too, but I only had 8 days with him. So, and that will be the subject of the next book, focusing more on my dad. So on this one, I took a lot of photos and a lot of videos. I even had one, it wasn't a GoPro, but one of those cameras I put on my head to do the whole, because the morning and evening routines were pretty intricate. So if anybody needed to learn how to do this stuff, I wanted to record that as well. And then while I was doing this, being a baby boomer, a lot of my friends were facing the same issue. And so I gave them tips and some advice of what I was doing, and they seemed to get some benefit out of it. So I said, I think I got something here, and I think a book is going to be the best way to get it out there, because I don't say it's a how-to book. It is a what I did book. My approach was pretty unique because I didn't have any children before this, and it was a learning, kind of a steep learning curve, because I jumped right in, and we didn't have any major disasters, but it was fun. And my mother had a really good sense of humor about it. And I certainly put humor in wherever I could, because it's a real stressful deal. And it's unusual for a son to take that on, but it just worked out that I felt I was going to do it. To me, it wasn't a big deal. Luckily, things worked out logistically. But the main focus was, my mother deserves better, and I'm going to give it to her. Nobody's going to, I think, do it better than I can. And she trusted me, and I asked her if she wanted me to come do this, and she said yes. So
that's beautiful. So tell me about the title, A Cup of Tea on the Commode. Why?
Okay. Well, I thought it was catchy, and I didn't create it.
It is catchy. That's why I'm asking you about it.
Okay. So my mom's favorite beverage was a cup of hot tea, skim milk, no sugar. And after this incident, she really didn't walk anymore. So getting her to and from the bathroom was kind of a big chore and could be dangerous. So we put a Commode bedside. And sometimes Mother Nature took a little longer than was comfortable for either one of us. So one day I just kind of jokingly said, "Hey, would you like a cup of hot tea?" And she said, "Sure." And it became a big hit. And so I called, what she was doing, multitasking, and it was great. So that became part of our morning ritual, cup of tea on the Commode.
That's nice. How long this thing went on, this relationship?
The book, I say our journey lasted 3.5 years.
So from being there because you thought that was going to be it, and having that fear because it did happen not too long before.
Yeah, we had a priest come in and deliver the last rites and all that. We picked out the coffin, and everything was set.
And then you got the gift of this time with your mom. I'm gonna call it a gift because I think.
Yeah, you know what? I 100% agree with you. I have something. So what's interesting about. So I wrote the book, and it took me a while because I'm really kind of an emotional guy when it comes to family. So I took the notes and just kind of let it kind of simmer in me for a long time before I could really sit down, because I would, even now at certain parts of the book, just I tear up. Mm-hmm. And most of it's funny. I mean, it's a good fun. It's a bit of a roller coaster, but so it took some time to do that. And upon reflection, so originally I think, okay, so it sounds like I went back to rescue my mom. And I kind of did. But upon reflection and thinking about the whole thing, I think, my mother's cry for help might have been a rescuing for me. because at that time, my business was failing. I had a snack food business at that point, probably doing it about a dozen years. And it hit some critical times. So that wasn't doing great. My acting career, I was aging out of that. So that was slowing up. I didn't have any particular intimate relationship at that point. And this gave me an opportunity to give me something that was really meaningful and gave me a purpose. And so it really was a gift to me, because we had a great time. And another reason I wanted to record this, because we have, there were some intimate conversations and moments that I didn't want the family to miss out on. And they were just, some of them are precious, some are just freaking funny. There was other moments that weren't pleasant, and that was me being a first-time parent. So I'm not too proud of that. But the book, I have it all in there because I wanted to tell an honest story. And
so tell me about the personality of your mom, because when you describe the quote where you say, do you understand that I am here and I do everything I can to help you, but you need to listen to me. And she left you hanging a little bit, like, let's see how this goes. So tell me about your mom personality. And because I think that's what drove to have this, sad, funny balancing, I guess. So tell me if I'm right.
She was very funny and very sociable in her youth. She was an only child. So that's where she was stubborn and independent. And that came out of being an only child. And she had a lot of tragedy in her life early on, too. And I have that recorded in the book. And so that, I think, caused her to put up some emotional walls. So she was not easy to get to break down. And we had, I think because I was a really curious kid, I got both of my parents to open up because they were depression babies. And you put on a hard exterior, and it's tough to get through. And so both of my folks were like that. And they don't talk about pain or their struggles or anything like that. They just keep moving forward. And I got them both to open up with really special moments. And I wanted to share those with my siblings, especially because I don't know if they knew these things. They read the book, and I'm sure there was a lot of new revelations in there for them. So with my mom throughout our life, I think because of our relationship, I got her to open up about a lot of stuff. She didn't talk that much during our journey because she was just kind of past that. And she also had a little bit of dementia. So we didn't talk about anything in depth. We near the end, we did talk about, or she brought it up actually, about death, which was amazing that she did. She said, I want to take my earrings off. And I've never seen her without earrings. And I said, why do you want to do that? She says, because I want to save them for heaven. And I said, well, the best place for you to save those is in your ears. And so why don't we keep them in? And that was, I think, the only time we talked about heaven. Or one other time, I think, when she mentioned heaven, I said, why? And she says, well, I'm not going to hell. And I said, I know, but why are you bringing this up now? And she wanted to make sure that, the earrings were protected. And I think that also that might have been, the mother coming out, wanting to make sure that we were all okay. It was nice. Those little moments were very nice. And I wanted to make sure that I preserved those things.
That's really cool. And I think the other gift for you is that you're able to share your stories, as you said, with photos, with filming, with words, and even telling the story. I mean, you're really good at telling the story, reading as an actor. So I love that there is a mix of all of this together. And you told me before we started that you're actually planning to have other adventure in the history of your family. So tell me a little bit about those.
Well, I touch on one of those in the book. I have a small chapter in there about my great-grandfather, who was the first to come over from Italy he settled in Brooklyn with his oldest son. And it took them 4 years to earn enough money to send for his wife, one daughter, and Michael, who turned out to be my grandfather, and he was 10 years
When
old.
did he do that? When did he came to the
Well,
US?
we didn't know that until I went over there. So 1895 is when my grandfather came over,
Wow.
and we didn't know it was a 4-year split until we went to this village. So I was working on a stage adaptation of Fellini's 8½in LA for a long time. We were workshopping this with my acting coach, and also he was a big time director, just a phenomenal director, Milton Casellas, and so we were working on this. I got into my Italian roots, and there was a rumor about my great grandfather that he was run out of this village when he was the mayor because he was having an affair with his secretary, who was also married. And the villagers ran them out of town. And that shocked me for two reasons. One, that, they were doing something wrong, but also in Italy, really? Infidelity? Come on. And so,
Never heard of it.
yeah, so it had been 100 years since any family member ever went back. My grandfather never went back. His father never went back. And we weren't sure why. And maybe it was this rumor. And so my dad had never been overseas before. During the war, he had an ear problem, so he wasn't allowed to fly. So he was a chemist, and he was shipped out to Utah to work on chemical warfare, which was something he didn't really like talking about. And so I have to do some more research on that for the next book. So I took him on this, and at this point, he was in the throes of heart disease. So he was not well. And it took me a long time to talk him into it. I didn't know that the health issues were that bad because I was in LA. We talked, everything sounded fine. But they kept that from me, I think, because they say you're too emotional. So, well, that's kind of a vital thing to tell somebody who's taken to a foreign country. I didn't speak the language. I spoke a little Italian. My dad didn't. His father never taught any Italian to any of us. So we get over there, and it took quite a journey to get to this little village. But we get to the village. At that point, it was only 200 people. We found one gentleman that spoke some Italian, and with my little bit of Italian and, of course, our hands, we communicated quite well. And so he says, the first thing out of his mouth is, we go to the police. And I'm like, oh, crap, here we go. We're going to be run out of town. The policeman, Vito Cupola, ended up being the entire police force, but also the town historian, which was very cool. So we go into to the police station, and Paolo introduces me as he said, 2 Americans have come, not even my name. And Vito launches into this story, and I'm trying to follow it. I said, so Paolo, what is that? He goes, oh, that's the famous story that we've been telling for years. He just told it to me again this morning. And I said, well, tell him I'm a Porro. And he goes, Natale Porro, America, 1891, just like that. So that was my great grandfather. And then we thought that my dad was so tired, he was sitting outside. So he missed the initial interaction with these guys. And so later on, we found out that Vito loved telling this story. So I asked him if I could film him doing an encore. And he said, sure, with Paolo introducing or translating for us. And so Paolo tells us that, yes, the mayor at that time, in probably the 1880s somewhere, was cheating, and the secretary was also cheating. And the villagers were really ashamed, but they were afraid of the mayor. The mayor was very powerful. And so nobody said anything. But then the rumor started spreading around the region and bringing a lot of shame. Cella San Vito was the village. And but again, they didn't do anything. But one day, a 31-year-old man stormed into the mayor's office and said, you must stop this affair or we will run you out of town. That guy was the hero, and that was my great-grandfather.
Oh. So
they ran. I don't know how that other story got over to the United States, because the only people who came were his family. But somebody, maybe some distant relative passed this along. So my great-grandfather actually was the hero, and that's why they, at that point, telling this story for over 100 years. And so we were like, we were like heroes coming back to this little village. And at that point, it was 200 people, and we had a lovely time. So I'll go more into that in the book. I wrote a screenplay. We were going to try to do a movie about it, and none of that worked out yet. So maybe still in the future. But
wow, that is so cool. You know why it's cool? I'm going to tell you a very short story. My partner in ITSP magazine, he was born in LA, but from his mom family, they're from Sicily. So he just went literally 2 weeks ago through going to search in this small town. Well, one is Palermo, so it's not small, but one is another small town near Agrigento in Sicily to get the birth certificate of both the grandparent and the grandmother. And his grandfather comes from the similar situation where it's a small little town. He walks with his very little Italian, because I've been trying to teach him Italian, but it won't get it. He walks into the only bar in the piazza, and he said the name of his grandfather, and it turned out that the bar owner is a close relative. And he says, yeah, we know who is this guy. Let me call this guy. And I'm laughing inside when you're telling the story, because his brother is the mayor of the little town. I'm like, how many of these stories there are out there? It's probably the true if you're Irish. I mean, I'm not just saying because I'm Italian, but of course, you know, you are in France now, so I'm sure. I mean, you know, the small town.
And the mayors are powerful.
I love all of this. It's just like I'm seeing a movie in my head.
Yeah.
You have to do this thing.
Yeah, it was fun. And then I had certain goals. One was really find the story, and hopefully the house was there. And sure enough, Vito closes the police station and starts walking down the street. And we said, "Where are we going?" He says, "We go to the house of Natali." So the house was still there. We didn't go inside because it was unoccupied. And they have they do this thing on the bottom of the door, some kind of a plank to let you know that nobody lives there yet. But I have a photo of my dad knocking on his father's door. It's just beautiful. And then my parents were both major recyclers, but especially my dad. And in the backyard of his father's house, there's a pile of junk. And I have on camera my dad picking up a piece of it going, "This must be why we don't throw anything away at home. It's in my blood," which was lovely. So,
wow, I love how you went back into all of this, and you know, the story must be really interesting to read. But I wanna ask you one last question, because I mean, obviously, I could keep going forever. I mean, we're talking about my culture too. So
yeah.
But to go back to the book, when you were writing the book, and this is a question I like to ask, what do you had in mind in terms of who is the audience for your book, and what do you think people are gonna really get out of it, or what you hope? I mean, you never really know. It's like you watch a movie as a director, you have this intention, and then somebody right. spin it around. You read a book, same thing. But as you were writing it, what were you thinking you were going to communicate with this?
Well, the original intent again was to record family history, and then as I was getting the reactions from friends who were hearing some of the stories and getting something out of it, then it expanded to, I guess, baby boomers first, who, it is entertaining, but there is some good advice in there as well. And I hope people will, I guess, learn something from that. But it's entertaining and things like that. And I did a reading. This is before COVID struck. There's a lot of retirees here in this little village in France. And so there's quite a expat community. So I was invited to do a presentation of this is before it was published. And I did this reading, and a lot of these people are retirees and stuff like that. And one of the ladies stood up afterwards, this French woman, and says, "When's this coming out? Because I want to give this to my children to learn how to take care of me." And I went, wow, that's a whole nother market I never even thought about. So I've had people young and old. I mean, most of the people who have read it have been, I'm surprised because it's men and women. I would think mainly women, because this falls still about 60-40% upon the daughters and the wives, the women of the family, to do this. So, but more and more guys are taking it on. And one of the things, people say, well, it's a guy doing it. You're seeing your mother naked for the first time at 90, and you got to get over it and get on with it, because this is what I guess the acting and design and everything came in. It was like, this was the new role I'm playing. I'm a caregiver. So assume that role and get over it. So she's still my mother. She deserves respect and dignity, but I have a job to do. So, and I think that it's expanding. Some young people have read it, and maybe that is something they can look forward to or shy away from when that time comes. But what's really cool about it, what I never thought about. So the village I grew up with in New Jersey was 25,000 people, but they still call it the village. And I haven't been in touch with a lot of those people, even though our family I have a brother who still lives in the town, for probably over 50 years since I graduated high school. And rarely went back, to visit my family, but high school reunions and all that. I went to one, I think. And all these people are starting to come up, especially on Facebook, that friend suggestions from Ridgewood, New Jersey. And so I just started inviting more of them, and more of them started getting into hearing about the book because I'm pretty good at marketing. So I've created like 150 teaser videos, and I do posts, probably 2 posts a week on the blog on all platforms for like probably over 2 years now. So the word is spreading, and the stories they're sharing with me, beautiful, heartwarming, touching stories about their own experiences or what they got out of my book. I received one about 3 weeks ago from someone who I didn't know, but I knew she was from my hometown. But she found out about it on one of those sites, and so she told me, she's taking care of her mother and things like that, and she hopes the book is going to be helpful. She said, and then she'd say, I read it once, I can't wait to read it again to see, what I can learn from it. And then she contacted me, said, my mother died 2 weeks ago, and I want to tell you that your book and your story and the humor you put into it really helped me get through this. And that just killed me. It's amazing. You say your stories are very important, and you don't know, again, how you put your heart and soul into something, you put it out in the world, you don't know how people are going to react. But boy, when you get stuff like that, and I've had a few other people who recently lost their folks, and they have written me certain things like that too, which are just really heartbreaking and stuff. But we've all, I've been through it. I lost both of my folks. They're going through it, or they will go through it. And so, it's lovely. So I would just say the audience is getting wider and wider. And then what's really been nice is, it's my first book, so you never know, but I have I spent a lot of time studying the genre. Memoirs, a whole different thing from what I was used to doing. And so I had a memoir mentor, and I took classes from her, and then read a lot of memoirs. And then I got a publisher, which was lovely. And that's very rare to get, especially in your first book. So I got a publisher, and the editors that worked with me on the book were great. And so we really honed it. I think it was pretty good. And that's how I landed the publisher in the first place. They liked the story. They liked the potential of it. They liked the voice and the quality of the writing. So that was good. And a lot of that just came out of experience.
And you got a bunch of awards for that.
That's a nice feather in the cap.
So that's a good sign. And I have to say that I'm one of those people that when I hear a story, I see a movie in my head. So I've seen everything, single thing you said. And I'm like, that could be a pretty cool, I don't know if a movie, yeah, for sure, but a stage play, I could totally see something like that. It could do that. I don't know.
I have a number of people have said, there should be a film, and some people are working on it, but Hollywood takes forever, so I'm not all that excited about it. I'd rather write. When you write,
Hollywood is not Hollywood anymore either. So.
I think I like writing. I like having that control, which is nice. So
no, but look, I honestly enjoy it. really listening to the story, reconnected with what you have experienced, kind of reliving it myself, and it got me thinking, about certain things in life, and I think that's the whole thing. And if you can balance, I mean, you could have gone completely sad and tragic on something like that, or balance it the way you did. So I gotta say, I'm definitely gonna download the audiobook and read
Cool.
it, and I'm intrigued by it.
I
So
think
wanna
one of the
thank you
things
for that.
I just wanted to say, so when I
Yeah.
first took this on, I told my mom, if I do this, we're going to have fun. And she was game. She was, okay, let's do
love
it.
it.
So that's kind of what my motto is. I try to find the joy in whatever I do. So especially in this particular thing, because again, it can get very stressful. But if you go in with that attitude, I'm going to make this fun, and I'm going to find the joy in it. It makes it so much easier, and especially for your loved one as well.
And to have something that is gonna keep all this memory alive, because every time you talk about it, every time you
Mom's still
mention
here,
it,
which is lovely.
exactly, with those hearings in heaven. So why not? Well, Mark, that was great. I really enjoyed this conversation, and I want to invite, obviously, everybody to learn more about you on your website, and there will be links to the book and the way to get in touch with you on the notes for the podcast.
Super.
If you're watching the video, that's going to be the same thing. And for me, just subscribe to the channel and the podcast. As lately, I'm getting a lot of really great story, and I feel lucky that I get to share this kind of intimate moment, even if you're over there in France. Maybe I'll get in touch with you when I'm in Italy, so we're
please
on the
do.
same time zone too. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you. This has been great. So
All right.
All right. Take care, Marco.
And everybody, take care. I'll see you on the next story here on Audio Signals Podcast.